Hey everyone, my name is Andy, and with the Battlefield 5 open beta recently coming to an end, I thought I wanted to make a video where I talk about 10 changes from the beta I would like to see in the final version of the game. Before I move on, however, I think it's worth mentioning that prior to the open beta, I also played in the first and second closed alpha, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of where this game is going. Alright, let's just start off slow and talk about the menu system. When you first boot up Battlefield 5, you are met by some big tiles you can scroll through with ads and events for the game. That is all good, but when you want to navigate through the individual menus, that's when it gets messy. For instance, if you want to customize your primary weapon for the assault class, such as the STG-44, you have to go to your company and from there select the class among your other classes and vehicles, and then click on Customize. That takes you to a section that shows all your gear for that class. From there, you click on the STG-44, which then takes you to another section where you can click Upgrades, Customization, or More Weapons. If you click on Customization, you can then visually customize each individual part of your weapon. That is a very tedious process if you just want to apply the same skin on the entire weapon, so I would like to see an Apply All option. Another problem I have with the menu system, and I'm not sure if any of you had this issue when you first launched the game, but I for one could not find the quit button, and I find it pretty ridiculous that you have to look for the quit button when it's just supposed to be there. But if you look closely, you can actually find some small bars next to the Battlefield 5 logo, and if you click on those, you are taken to a side panel which then has the quit button. That is very inconvenient, and in general I must say that this menu system is the most confusing and tedious I have ever experienced in a Battlefield game. The next thing I want to talk about is specializations. You probably remember those from Battlefield 1, but this time around they are a little different, as these are your perks for your primary weapons. When you progress your company and your primary weapons, you unlock more specializations and you can apply them to your weapons. My main gripe with it though is that they only provide benefits and no drawbacks. That essentially means if you unlocked all specializations for a certain weapon, you would probably win most gunfights purely based on the fact that you had all upgrades for your weapon, while your opponent did not. I don't think that's a fair and fun system, and if it were up to me, I would much rather prefer the progression system from Battlefield 4, where you unlocked attachments along the way for your weapons, because those were not game-changing in any way, as they also had drawbacks to them. Another problem with these specializations is that you cannot apply them when you are in a live match. That means when you unlock them, you then have to quit the server and go to your company to apply them to your weapons. Oddly enough, you can customize the visuals of your weapons while on the server. I believe DICE are aware of this though, and probably will want to make this server side as well, so here's to hoping that it makes it in at launch. Now let's talk about the big one, attrition. This is probably the most discussed topic of Battlefield 5, and for a good reason, because it changes up the gameplay quite drastically. But let me just say that I like the philosophy behind it, but I think the implementation could be a lot better. For those of you who are not aware yet what attrition is, let me just explain. Attrition is basically a system where you start off with less ammo than in previous Battlefield games. And to restock, you have to go to a support player or supply station to get it. The same goes for healing if you take damage, because you don't fully regenerate your health anymore. You have to seek out a medic or supply station to get your health back. You can get a spare medical pouch though, which you can then apply to yourself if you take damage. That was actually a change from the closed alphas, which is a good one in my opinion. Now you probably want to hear my take on attrition now, and what I think needs to change. And I'm going to in just a moment, but before I do, I need to tell you about my experiences when playing with attrition. In the matches I've played in the alphas and the beta, I more often than not find myself going to a supply station to restock ammo and health. I rarely get ammo or health from my teammates or squad mates, even though that is the whole point of attrition. You are not playing with your squad either, because you often have to separate to find a supply station for ammo and health. The problem I see is that DICE tries to cater to two contradicting playstyles, and that is the lone wolf players versus the team-oriented players. It really shows with the number of supply stations, where every flag on Conquest has a supply station, and there's even a couple more placed around the maps. If DICE really want to encourage team play and squad play in Battlefield 5 without punishing solo players, I think they should limit the supply stations to only a couple per map, and they should not place them on flags, but rather after each team's gimme flag. Let players start off with the magazine count of 3 from the second closed alpha as well, instead of just 2. Now you may think to yourself, Andy, that's not going to work. But hear me out, I'm not done yet. To really capitalize on the team and squad play aspect, I would take cues from Battlefield Hardline and implement the ammo and health grabbing feature. That means when you go to a medic or support player, you have the option to interact with them and grab a medical or ammo pouch. In other words, with this feature you rarely run out of ammo or health, because there's always a teammate or squad mate nearby that can help you out. I believe these changes are the only way for DICE to succeed with attrition in Battlefield 5. The next thing I want to talk about is kit switching, because I feel as though that has been somewhat overlooked by a large portion of the Battlefield community, but I actually think it's a big deal. The thing is, in past Battlefield games you could walk up to a fallen teammate or enemy and pick up their kit, and essentially becoming their class. That means you would have access to their gadgets, and that was very helpful if you were in a pressure situation. Let me give you an example from Battlefield 1. In that game, if you killed an assault player as any other class, and there happened to be a tank nearby, you had the option to switch to the assault player's kit and use an AT rocket gun, for instance, against the tank. That was an interesting dynamic, and it also added another layer of tactic to the gameplay. I'm not sure why, but for some reason DICE has decided to take that away in Battlefield 5, so now you only switch out the primary weapon. Not only does this limit your abilities in some sense, but it also introduces some pretty overpowered kit combinations. You could essentially bump into a medic with the STG-44, which is arguably the best gun in the game, and then be able to heal at any one time. That is pretty ridiculous to me, so I really urge DICE to revert back to the old way of kit switching. My next topic is the deploy overview screen, and I want to touch upon the vehicles in particular. In Battlefield 5 you cannot select a vehicle from this screen unless it's available to spawn into. That was also a problem in Battlefield 1 when the game first launched. But the option to select a vehicle regardless if it was available or not was added later into the game's life. I realize that Battlefield 5 has probably been in development while Battlefield 1 was still getting post-launch support. But I have a hard time understanding why this feature has not made it into the game at this stage. It solved a big issue in Battlefield 1 where you could not customize your vehicles while on a server. And now Battlefield 5 has this same issue, so I definitely expect DICE to deliver on this feature at launch. In conjunction with this, I also think DICE should add spawn timers to the vehicle spawn icons. That was actually a feature of Battlefield Hardline, and it was a neat little addition where you could easily determine when a vehicle respawned or if it was currently taken. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed, but in Battlefield 5, when you perform a medic revive or body revive on a squad mate, a circle with a line fills up as you perform the revive. I think DICE should add that to the vehicle deploy icons, so you know when and if a vehicle reappears. While we are on the topic of deploying, let's discuss the squad spawn screen, and let me just say right away that I really dislike this screen. The idea that you should always spawn on your squad mates is fine, but the problem with the screen is that it's so limited compared to the regular deploy overview screen. For starters, you cannot change your loadout and there's no minimap either, so it's very hard to determine potential dangers around the squad mate you are about to deploy on. Every time you get killed, you are met by this screen, and if you want to go to the deploy overview screen, you have to press a button, which is very clunky in my opinion. I would be fine with the squad spawn screen if DICE added the loadout and minimap onto it, but if not, I would like to see an option in the settings where you could bypass the screen every time you get killed. Now this next thing is something that really surprised me when I was playing, and that is the inability to switch teams. I noticed it as I was trying to switch to another squad, so I instantly thought to myself that the switch team button had not been implemented yet. One of my fellow YouTubers actually took to Twitter recently and asked whether or not you could switch teams, and one of the DICE developers responded by saying, "No, that is by design." I'm not sure if this is a case of DICE trying to solve the team balancing issue that has been a recurring theme of every Battlefield game. It would seem so, but in Battlefield 1 they did implement a team balancer post-launch, and I know it had issues with team stacking and such, but I think most of it have been ironed out now. And they didn't remove team switching in that game. Either way, taking away the ability to switch teams during a match is a complete misstep from DICE, and to me, it feels like they are trying to solve one problem by introducing another, and that is not the way to go. What if you want to squad up with some people, but not everyone is on the friends list? You then have to give them your server number, but if they end up on the wrong team, they cannot switch to the other side. So I can confidently say that this solution does not solve anything, so DICE should just bring back the switch team button from previous games. I want to talk about the heads-up display now, or the HUD as we normally call it. DICE has basically taken the HUD from Battlefield 1 and implemented it into Battlefield 5 without making any significant changes to it, and that is what I have a problem with. To better understand what I'm talking about, we need to go back to when Battlefield 1 first launched, because that game introduced a new HUD layout which was a refreshing change from Battlefield 4. The main difference was that the overall scoring table was placed at the top instead of above the minimap in the lower left hand corner. The thing is, in Battlefield 1 ribbons were not included to begin with, but when they were added later on by community request, DICE clearly didn't think of a proper way to implement them. You would see it when you were standing in the flag capture zone on Conquest and you got a ribbon at the same time, as it always overlapped with the flag capture icon on the screen. That was very annoying to say the least. Fast forward to Battlefield 5 and this issue still persists, and it has even gotten worse with various messages popping up which prevents you from seeing the objective icons. I'm really disappointed that DICE has not addressed this for Battlefield 5, considering it has been well known since Battlefield 1. I just hope they take another look at it before launch and potentially implement an alternative HUD for us to use. Or even better, make it fully customizable so we can make our own HUD, similar to Battlefield 4. I'm sure this next topic is something that a lot of vehicle players have an opinion about, and that is vehicle resupplying in Battlefield 5. Just so you know, I'm mainly an infantry player, so I rarely use vehicles, but I still played around with them during the alphas and beta. So I want to give my perspective and especially touch upon resupplying of airplanes. In the closed alphas, the way you had to resupply your airplanes was by flying outside the combat zone to find a big circle in the sky you could then fly through, which would restock your ammo. That was a simple way to go about it, and I really liked it, but apparently DICE thought that was too easy and changed it for the open beta, so it required more skill. You still had to leave the combat zone, however. But instead you had to locate a narrow steel frame on the ground, which to me looked like an American football goal, and fly through it, while also pressing a button to get resupplied. That is way too complicated for an inexperienced pilot like me. The combination of having to line up the plane and pressing a button within a small window of opportunity is not ideal, and it only suits ace pilots at the moment, and that should not be the case. In the beta, you basically had a bigger chance of crashing your plane than actually managing a successful resupply. In my opinion, DICE should go back to how it worked in the closed alphas, but they could also find a good middle ground between the two mechanics. I would then go with the circles in the sky from the alphas, and then include the button press to get resupplied from the beta. I think most players would be able to pull that off, but it would still require that you pay attention and press at the right moment to get restocked, which is fair, I think. So this could also be a good solution. To wrap up this video, I want to discuss the possibility of having faction-specific weapons in Battlefield 5. I have not come across anyone in the Battlefield community who has suggested this, even though I think it's an obvious talking point. We actually saw it in Battlefield 3, but not in a big way. It was Battlefield Hardline that really embraced the idea of having faction-specific weapons, where each faction had exclusive access to various primary weapons, sidearms, and melee weapons. You could still unlock them for the other faction though, but it required a lot of kills with each individual weapon. It proved to be an excellent progression system, and it was not just tacked on for the sake of progression, but because it was accurate in terms of the game's setting. Many of you might remember when Battlefield 1 first launched, that it basically had no progression system, which led to a stale gameplay experience, and that game had no faction-specific weapons. It would have made perfect sense though, considering it was a historical shooter, and looking back, I think it could have made a world of difference for the game. When it comes to Battlefield 5, it looks like DICE have a good progression system in place, with their Tides of War live service, but in my opinion, you can never have enough progression. That is why I think Battlefield 5 should adopt the system of Battlefield Hardline, with its faction-specific weapons. It makes sense considering its historical setting, and I honestly think it feels wrong when a British soldier is running around with the STG-44, when that weapon was issued to Germans. I know this is a game, and DICE can take their liberties, but Battlefield 5 has proven to have problems with immersion, due to its historical inaccuracies and wacky customization options. I think adding faction-specific weapons would remedy a lot of that, and provide a much more immersive gameplay experience. So I really hope that DICE wants to take my feedback on board. With everything I've talked about, if I left you thinking that I don't like Battlefield 5, then that's not the case. I actually think the game has a lot of good things going for it. For instance, I really like the gunplay with its predictable recoil pattern and visual only suppression. I like that the old Conquest ticket bleed system is back. I like the body revive system, the fortification system, etc. But the game is currently a diamond in the rough that needs some work before it can reach its full potential. But I am sure DICE can deliver on a great product at launch. Anyway, that was everything I wanted to cover, so thank you very much for watching. But if you have any thoughts or opinions, then please leave it in the comment section down below, and I will try and read through it. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like, and sharing on social media is appreciated as well. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more content. But with that said, my name is Andy, and stay tuned for my next video.